hello everyone. So you are tuning into your May PD Talking Circle. So before we begin, I'm going to review our disclaimer.
This presentation was produced under U.S. Department of Education contract number GS00F115CA with Synergy Enterprises, Inc. The views expressed herein do not necessarily represent the positions or policies of the U.S. Department of Education. No official endorsement by the U.S. Department of Education of any product, commodity, service, or enterprise mentioned herein is intended or should be inferred.
Awesome. Again, thank you guys for joining us today. It's so exciting to see everyone. I wanted to first, those that are new here and those that, we haven't seen each other in a long time, welcome Linda Brake, your program officer.
Hi, everybody. Welcome today, and I hope that you'll find the information that we're reviewing very informative, and I look forward to hearing from all of you.
Awesome. And I know you guys have seen countless emails from myself. I am your TA coach. I just wanted to say thank you all. It's been a joy helping you all with your APRs. We absolutely loved reviewing them and seeing all the good things you guys are doing. And we're going to talk a little bit more about, okay, so we did our APR, guys. What now? So we're going to talk more about that later. And so just going over our agenda for today, Linda's going to bring us through some review, and we're going to go through some reviews every single talking circle, just a way for us to be on the same page and understand, all of the jargon, all of the legalese together. And then we're going to go through data evaluation. We're also going to program share. What are some things that we can learn from each other and share upon each other? And then we're going to go through some upcoming events and how we can support you during the summer. But before we dig into that, and before we dig into, the fun part of us being together today, we just wanted to give you some reminders before we begin our session. As always, we just really want to emphasize and encourage you all to please be sure that you are drawing down at least quarterly. It's extremely important that your expenditures and your G6 drawdowns, they match. It also allows Linda to see what you guys are doing, and it's really helpful just to stay on top of that frequency. And so if you have not drawn down this year, please do so. If that is something you would like to connect with Linda about, talk with Linda about, it's super important just to keep Linda just in the know of everything you are doing. So please, please, please remember to draw down at least quarterly. If not, we would love you to be superstars and do it monthly if you could. That would be amazing for us to know, especially this APR update coming along. We would love to see more drawdowns in our systems. And just talking more about our drawdowns at this time, you should have expended at least 60 to 80% of your budgeted funds. And so again, we just really want to encourage you that, we're about to end year 3 going into year 4, which means a lot of you guys are about to start induction in your induction periods. And there's a certain number, there's a threshold of funds that can be used for induction that cannot be used in any other category. So it's extremely important that you are drawing down, that you are talking with the budget office, you're talking about your drawdown challenges, you're developing a plan to overcome some of these situations. And lastly, you are talking with Linda and communicating your challenges, because like I just mentioned, induction periods, you can only spend a certain number of dollars during that induction period. And it's really important that you and Linda are on the same page when you guys are going through induction for these next 2 years. Linda, am I missing anything that folks should know about this drawdown update?
No, that's great, Doris. I think that you've covered it fine.
Awesome. Thank you. And so we're just moving on into attendance. Again, if you have any folks in your grant team that you want to come and experience these great talking circles with you, please, please, please invite them. We also expect all our grantees to attend our events, especially our project directors. If at any chance you missed a talking circle, please feel free to catch up on our YouTube channel under our webpage under technical assistance. We always upload it, if not, up to a week after we have our talking circle dates. And so it's really important that if you miss some information, that you are able to tune back in with us. I highly encourage you, just, if you have free time one day or you need background music at all, just pop on a PD talking circle and just, let your brain just listen to the great things that you have heard before, but maybe you're like, oh, I forgot about that. Let me refresh my memory. So just a recap, these past 6 months, we have gone through deep PD, PCS refresher training and regulation refresher. So please, pop those on. Let that, ring in your ears, go to sleep to some of them, JK. But it's really important that you do pop back into our videos and you do have a refresher of our regulations, because our program is so important, it's so unique, and it's really important that we're staying on top of those. So speaking of regulations and review, I'm going to turn it over to your program officer, Linda Brake, and we're going to go through some codes that we should be in the know of. Linda?
Okay, I thought with the turnover amongst project directors, the program officer, when I look back just a year ago, it was Angela Hernandez, and then it was Bianca, and now I've been here for a while. So we've had great turnover. And then also we've been talking about the change in regulations. It might be a good time for us and a good use of our time to just review the differing documents that were required and held responsible for implementing. And I have put the regulations in the chat if you want to link to them. But there are also going to be some additional documents that we need, that we're responsible to uphold also. So every month we're going to go through just about 2 or 3 of the different sections of the regulations. And you're probably looking at the slide thinking, well, why didn't she start with 263.1? And that is, it's just kind of a summary of what the professional development program is, and it's not changed. And because you work in it every day, I think you have a real good handle on the fact that it is both a teacher and administrative service programs to get teachers and administrators in front of Indian children within our schools. And then 263.2 talked about who is eligible to apply. And of course, your application period was back in 2021, and I don't feel we need to review that part. So if we can go to the next slide, the 2 sections I do want to talk about today is what definitions apply to us. And if you hit the link, you will see that there are many, many definitions. I refer to those a lot, but there's only a couple that I wanted us to talk about today. One of those being qualifying employment. And if you find that in your regulations, you will see that it states employment in an LEA that serves a high proportion of Indian students. And that is the entire definition of qualifying employment. So while we tend to leave a lot of those definitions as more flexible, because we do want to individually address issues that arise, there's not too much flexibility in what qualifying employment means. It must be in an LEA, and it must serve a high proportion of Indian students. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing I really wanted to discuss today was induction services, because the grant is set up as a 60-month grant, being that of 5 years, 3 years for training. And in September, we will be hitting into year 4 of being an induction year, or what should be an induction year for most of us. So induction means that it's by educators You could be using traditional leaders or your cultural experts. So those are the three groups of people who should be delivering those induction services. And it does say for 1, 2, or 3 years of qualifying employment as designated by the department in the NIA. Now, I know a lot of you may not have read the NIA since you applied for this grant. And because the regulations say 1, 2, or 3 years, what is the definition of induction? But if you look at the NIA, and I'm going to go, I'm going to ask to share my screen so we can look at that NEA. And I've highlighted it in here, that for our purpose, induction services, are you seeing the NIA?
Yes.
Okay. Induction services are during the award period, and that is those 60 months. And then if you ask for a no-cost extension year, that will extend your award period. To participants after graduation, certification, or licensure. Now, I know a lot of you have asked about, can I do induction while they're in training? Well, if we look at the NIA, it says we cannot. It has to come after graduation, certification, or licensure for 2 years. So induction must take place for that 2-year period while participants are completing their work-related payback in schools in LEAs that serve a high proportion of Indian students. So it then gives us that definition of qualifying employment. So if we're going to go back.
Hi, Linda. We have someone with their hand raised.
Okay.
Let's see it.
That would be me. Hi, Linda. It's Renuka from North Dakota here. So our program, the licensure period is actually the 2-year BSED in elementary and or ECE. And the 3rd year is actually the master's, right? So technically, they wouldn't be done with it until the 3 and maybe a no-cost extension, but I can, right? Because the BSED, the licensure part is the first 2 years.
Correct.
So I can. I mean, although they're in masters, they can, because it's an accelerated program, I can start that induction because they're going to be teaching and learning.
I would just caution you to look at the definition of a participant, because the participant, and I'm going to pull it up on my screen, so I'm looking at it with you also. If you look at the definition, okay, that's not what I want.
But you know what I mean, right? I mean, they would
do.
get their license. They will. I mean, they're qualified to apply for it and get it, yet they're still doing their master's, which is not a licensure program. They're just getting a higher degree.
Right. Okay. Yeah. All right. So if we can go back to our slides. And then it looks at number 2, that induction is support to improve their professional performance and promote retention. And it says that induction must, at a minimum, include these activities: high quality mentoring, coaching, and consultative services for the participant, access to research materials and information on teaching and learning, assisting new teachers with technology, and the use of data, particularly student achievement data and classroom instruction. It is clear, timely, and useful feedback on their performance in coordination with their supervisors. And it can also include periodic meetings and seminars for collaboration, feedback, peer networking, and support. And I know many of you provide that in your induction service. Now, one of the issues that I know several of you have had is keeping students participating in induction as they, as we've stated, now they're working and we still want to do induction services. And so many LEAs already have their own new employee induction and new teacher induction. So when the PD program has to provide induction, and their LEA provides induction, sometimes I feel like they're getting double the induction services. So we've talked a lot about it is our responsibility, as in the PD program, to provide these induction services, but we don't require attendance. We don't track attendance. We do want them encouraged because a lot of the LEAs aren't bringing in those traditional tribal leaders and the cultural experts. And I think that's where we can really provide that service to the participants, because of course they're going to get a lot of how to interpret academic data, technology use in the classroom. So many LEAs now require online grade books, online lesson plans, and those type things, specific curriculum that is online. But I think we need to continue to provide the tribal leaders, the cultural experts that we bring into our programs. And as Doris mentioned, as we head into that induction period, I do want to make you aware that induction services, the budget periods are limited to $120,000 for those induction services. I know a lot of you have carryover money and you are allowed to carry that into year 4, but the induction itself cannot exceed the $120,000 that is mentioned in the NIA. So if we can go to the next slide. We're now going to look at section 263.4. Did the slides progress for you all? There it is. Which talks about what costs may be covered in your training programs. And this is both for training and induction also. But you can use anything it's cost to fully finance a student's educational expenses, to include books, tuition, any required fees that the university or college requires, health insurance, a stipend, dependent allowance, technology costs, program required travel, and instructional supplies that the participant may be needing in order to complete that cost. And the next page gets into a whole lot more of that, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. But when we talk about letter B, the secretary announces the expected maximum amount of stipends and the maximum amount of dependent allowance in the notice of inviting applications. So that's in the NIA again. So if we can switch to go back to that. There's the NIA. And this time I want to search with stipend. And here it is right here. The maximum stipend amount is $1,800 per month for full-time students. And grantees may also provide participants with $300 allowance per month per dependent during the academic term. So those are the maximums that we are held to be accountable to. I know that in looking at costs that you all submitted in your APRs, many of you have educational costs that go over that $1,800 a month. But unfortunately, that's the amount of the stipend that we're able to provide them. Now, it can be the stipend plus books, plus tuition, plus the other things. So we can talk about that when we talk about the next slide. So the important thing to remember there is that we cannot have, it is up to $800. If you are at a college or they have other means to access other funding where they don't need $1,800 a month, then they can't be making money to attend the PD program. But we can certainly go up to that maximum allowable amount. So on the next slide, we'll go back to some of those definitions on what those things cost. But in looking at that, other costs, but that must not be included as training costs, include cost for, they can collaborate with prospective employers within the grantee's local area to create a pool of qualifying employments. So if you want to reach out to different LEAs in your district and let them know that you have some upcoming scholars who will be looking for employment and they need very specific employment to be considered for service payback, we can certainly include those costs. If you're working with a placement agency that places teachers, any of those type things are certainly included within your budget. In-service training activities, such as mentorships, linking experienced teachers with those less experienced. So if that's part of your induction program, that can be included. Assisting participants in identifying and securing qualified employment in their field of study, that can be included. Teacher mentoring programs, professional guidance, instructional support, connecting them with local tribal leaders and cultural experts so that when they go out for job interviews, they are more able to speak about what they can bring to the classrooms and the unique perspective of why we want those culturally relevant and tribal experiences in those classrooms teaching those children. That could be included as an expense. And then programs designed to train any tribal leaders, cultural experts to assist participants in native languages and cultural mentoring, guidance, and support. So if you want to teach those participants some key language terms or some cultural activities that are unique to the area in which they live and work, that could certainly be included. So I wanted to, if we could go back to slide 12, while we're talking about stipends, independent allowance, those were other of those real critical definitions that I wanted to include with you all to review today. And the one I don't think we really went over was the dependent allowance definition. And a dependent allowance means cost for the care of a minor child who is under the age of 18, who resides with the participant and for whom the participant has responsibility. The thing I love about that definition is it doesn't say what that responsibility is. So we might not have to have a, I don't even know what I want to say. They don't have to be our dependent on our taxes. They don't have to be, we don't have to have 100% legal custody. We don't have to have guardianship. They just have to live in our home. So if they're a grandparent attending college or university and they have a child under the age of 18 that they're responsible for, and that 18-year-old is in some type of after-school program, childcare program, then we can provide them with that $300 per month per child. So that does fall into the definitions, and that's part of why we want those conditions, those definitions to be so flexible. We do want to have some flexibility in choosing who those dependents are. So I wanted to be sure that that definition was brought to your attention today and that you had a clear understanding of that. So as Doris said, if you have any questions about those two sections that we reviewed, please come off and mute. I just want to preface it a little bit by saying at the next talking circle, we are going to skip, and let me go back to those regulations for a minute, but 263.4 talks about, 263.5 talks about application requirements. You applied a long time ago. We're not going to hit that. What priority was given to those applications? I don't think we need to talk about that any. And then 263.7 talks about how we rated your applications during the peer review process. So we're not going to talk about that section. So at the next talking circle, we are going to talk about 263.8, which are the requirements for a student taking a leave of absence, and 263.9, which are the payback requirements. And I'm learning so much about that. And I want to bring that to your attention so that we're really truthful and honest and clear when we talk to these participants about becoming a participant and signing that payback agreement. Because we certainly don't want to hurt them with having them exit with these large balances that are owed back to the agency. But we'll talk about those next time. And if there aren't any questions, I'll turn it back over to Doris. Thank you.
Hello, can everyone still see the screen? Thumbs up. Awesome. Thank you. Just didn't want to lose you all. Okay, so before we dig into the fun part, we have to go through our APR reminders. And so I wanted to say first, I absolutely love those that included your pictures of your graduates, pictures of your participants. It was really nice to see all the great faces, all the graduation photos. So we really do appreciate you allowing us to take a peek of what your students are doing. And so just moving forward, should you submit an APR update? And so I just wanted to kind of go over this because if not every single person on this call should be submitting an APR update. If you reported 999 on all of your sections, yes, you do need to submit an APR update. If you think you submitted an incorrect number or that number has changed, if you have done any summer programming, if some of your project objectives, if you made any progress at all, if anything has changed, yes, you need to submit an APR update. But if you think that you submitted all your correct data, there's no changes, you did not report any 999s, then no, you do not need to submit an APR update. But after reviewing your APRs with your program officer, most, if not all of you have inputted 999, or some of you may have forgotten to report on your project objectives. If there were project objectives in your proposal that you did not put on your APR that you just submitted to your program officer, then we do want you to submit an APR update too. So just a reminder, inside G6, you should have reported on your GEPRA measures, your program measures, but a big chunk of us forgot to add our project objectives. You guys created such great proposals, added such great project objectives, great goals for yourselves, but we just didn't get a chance to see them. So if that is you and you thought, dang, I knew I forgot something. I knew I should have put something in. It's your project objectives. And if you go back and that is you, please reach out to Linda or please reach out to your TA team and we can get you all set to go for your APR update. Just a few reporting reminders. Again, if you reported 999, please provide your updates for those measures and email them to the email you see at oei@sceiservices.com, and please CC your program officer. We're going to input the Section A form inside the chat for you. And so it's not going to be like G6 where you have to go in and report it one by one, because you will be sending it to us either through email or through JotForm. I know many of us have done the JotForm previously. You do not have to go in individually. And we also encourage you to include your optional Section C tool. If anything has been drawn down, if anything has been spent and you want to provide that update, it's not required, but if that is something you want to attach, you have that option as well. And so this is just a quick snapshot of what your Section A will look like. And then also, so if you remember in our APR PD webinar, we advise you to not use your APR as a budget revision. That is not what your APRs are for. Budget revisions are completely different from your APR. So if you're like, Doris, we already submitted our APR, we, found some things we wanted to revise, when can we give you our budget revision? The answer is now. You could do it now. You could have done it a day after you submitted your APR. And so within our Padlet, within the PD Padlet, you can find your budget revision forms. And so it's been some time since you had your APR, you submitted your APR, you've gone through your expenditures, your drawdowns, you looked at your project measures, and you may be contemplating submitting a budget revision. You can do that now. And so we highly, highly encourage you to review any of your project measures and plan out what needs to happen to meet them. Determine if there are funds in your budget right now or any funds in any categories that for a fact you are not going to be able to expend them by the end of the year. And you want to determine if you could use those funds in other categories. This is the time. I highly, highly encourage you. If you don't listen to anything I say during this talking circle today, listen to this. Please, please email Linda. Please get with your program officer and discuss that budget revision, discuss your thoughts, we may not be able to expend everything in this category. What can we do? And so it's really important that you bring Linda along and you complete these revisions if you feel as though there's some categories, there's some funds that you may need in other budget categories to meet your project measures and objectives. Another useful tip is it may be really helpful to bring your budget and program staff together to map out the remaining part of the year. Even if it's you guys just meet one time this summer and one time before the fall ends, it's extremely important to get everyone together to map out how you can meet your project objectives. And then, and like always, please submit it to your program officers. Are there any questions about your budget revision. Any situations or scenarios you'd like to run past Linda while she is here? I highly encourage you to take advantage of the fact that we have Linda right here on call.
I just want to bring up that if you are going to do a budget revision, this is the perfect time, because if you are one of the grantees who in your APR had a large available balance, if you don't have a good plan on spending that money, we're going to reduce your budget for the next funding year. And we're looking at doing that now. So if you have, if your large available balance in your APR was big, and we've already talked about, we're heading into that first induction year, and you're not allowed to spend over 120,000 on induction services. So if, like Carmelita just said, if you have a plan to start new students in year 4, be sure to go ahead and submit that budget revision, or we're probably going to do that for you. And that is certainly not our intention at all. So it's the perfect time to get those revisions in. And I did see that a lot of you say, you know, we're working on a budget revision. We'll submit one, that was your plan to submit a budget revision. So go ahead and get that done. Complete those recruited in the training year. Yes.
Linda, a quick question. So not starting new, I mean, because the training period, if we started with a new cohort, this is a discussion that we've had with our team. It'll go another 2 or perhaps 2.5 years, which is not gonna work really. If we started in the fall and spring. So that is a challenge right there. Anyway, I don't want to take everybody's time on this. This was something that we were thinking, even with the recruiter bringing in, we won't have enough time because it's a 3-year program, and you're adding that, and plus the participants we have are behind already.
Right. And just be sure that if you do fall into that situation, that you not only have enough money for your no cost extension year, but you have additional funding to last if you need another no cost extension. That is a possibility that we can work on, but you know, it would require a project director at least for a portion of that time, and we can't move training in any other category. So your salaries and fringe benefits budget will already have to be strong enough to carry you through all those additional no cost extension periods. But we'll continue to work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Linda, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just looking at, this is Kelly Brame with Choctaw Nation. So I'm looking at just some of our anticipated unexpended funds and want to kind of go back to, because I know even on our previous grant, we do know that we have one student that is going to need to go into and continue their education going into year 4, just because of some testing conflicts that we had. So I do know that we'll still need some training funds for that participant. However, we are not going to expend. We will have some funds still available in that category. Now, you're saying that we are not going to be allowed to move any of those training funds out of, can we request that approval from you to carry some of those funds into other categories in a budget revision?
So it depends. Like to have those students attend conferences would still be a training activity, although it might go up into travel. That's just one example. But
so it's still funds that we're using towards the participants. Training. However, it does not fall under their payback
Right.
Okay,
And
So
some
if-
of that, you know, like we were talking about, if you're purchasing their praxis or their graduation regalia or some of those other type fees that are definitely allowable, but they may not be in training. But like you said, they are for the use of the participant to be trained.
okay,
But
Okay.
that's why that explanation column that Doris has displayed there, that's when that column becomes so critically important, because you're talking about how that's still benefiting the training of the participant, but goes into a different budgeting category.
a different category. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, we have a few, sorry, we have a few questions in the chat, but before we answer that, Linda, I think this is a really great time. If maybe you could explain so to everyone in the are on the call, I know that a few have said in your APR that you did not recruit in year 3, but you are looking to recruit or bring in new students in year 4. Linda, can you talk about if product directors here on the call are thinking about bringing in a new cohort or a new class or a few new members, and say, unfortunately, a student does not complete by the time the grant fund ends and those students are exited without completion, can you just talk more about what happens to that student?
Yeah. A student that exits without completion is automatically going to be turned over to cash payback, because your grant will end and they don't have a way to continue to participate in induction services or continue to be trained and receive that stipend, because the grant will have ended. So the only students that you should be recruiting to start now are students who only need between maybe 12 and 15 credits in order to graduate. They should be pretty well labeled as a late junior, early senior, because they do have to finish training and have 2 years of induction. And we have 2 years left, so they could have 1 year of training. Year 5 could be their first year of induction, and then the no-cost extension could be the second year of induction. But any more past that, then we're looking at the fact where we need to talk about extra no-cost extensions and carrying that budget through and employing key personnel to promote those induction services. So anybody who starts now, we need to have a good indication that they are going to be able to finish by spring of 2025. And don't wait if you have summer school or summer programs. If they can start this summer, I would actually have them do that. But definitely August is going to be our last time to go ahead and start students into that training program. Good point, Doris. Thank you.
Thank you for explaining. Nancy, if you're able to either type back or unmute, did Linda answer your question in the chat that you had?
I only wanted to kind of know what would be a time frame for getting in the updated APR and any changes that we're proposing. What would
Awesome.
be the
Yes.
best time frame?
Yes. So it's on your screen now. For those that have any updates or any changes or just want to submit new information that may have come in, the absolute last due date is September 12th. So that means that if you had a project objective, or maybe you have a student that is completing in the summer or whatever it may be, you have until September 12th to update that, to provide us that information. But that does not go to say that if, things have happened during the summer, or you have any data that you want to update and you really want Linda to know, we're not saying you can't update that to Linda or, show it to Linda. You absolutely have the opportunity to let Linda know all the great things you guys are doing or there's any progress. But we're saying the absolutely very last official due date to put in your APR. Sorry, guys, if you hear like jets, I live very close to an Air Force base. But if that's the absolute last date to submit all your APR updates to us is September 12th. But I highly, highly recommend that if there's anything you want to share, please share. Please update us. We'd love to know what you're doing during the summer.
And I don't think,
I have a question. I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead, Linda, if you were going to respond. I don't want to cut you off.
no, that's fine. I was just going to answer Lacey's question in the chat, but go ahead with
Okay.
yours.
Oh, no, I'll wait. I'll wait. Please answer hers.
Okay. Lacey has a question. Do training stipends have to be routed through financial aid and held to the student's remaining cost of attendance? How your college and university deals with paying students is entirely up to that college and university. So that the agency, the Department of Education, totally stays out of how students receive their money. So that would be a discussion for you to have with your budgeting person there. Okay, Lirio.
Okay, I have a question regarding what about students who, when there's a period between when they complete their coursework and when they become actually certified? Because in Arizona, they have to pass the certification exams for the areas that they'll be teaching in. And there are some students that struggle to complete those exams and pass those. And if they cannot enter payback service until they have become fully certified, what does that mean in terms of our timeline then?
So that is actually in the regulations that we're going to discuss the next time, but here's a little preview for you. Within 30 days of them graduating, which is finishing up their training program, they need to enter the PDPDCS website and declare whether they feel they're going to be service payback or cash payback. Some of them may already know they're taking a job that doesn't have a high proportion of Indian students. Some of them may already know that they don't want to work in the field of education, or they don't want to work at an LEA. They know they want to work at the tribal Head Start or some other situation like that. And then they have up to a year to start their to search for qualifying employment. So they just have to go in once every 6 months, and I'm still looking for that qualified employment. I still plan to intend to be a service payback. And then they'll have to start their induction once they find their employment. So that might be another great indication that you are going to need an extended no-cost extension period. But somebody will have to continue to access that student and verify that they are getting their induction services.
Okay, thank you. And maybe in the next one, there'll be more opportunity to discuss, but in the PD system, will I get any kind of indication of what the student has noted? Because as far as I know, the students are all intending to do payback service. But if there is a point where, like, is there, I know you said it, once they graduate, they need to put that in.
Right.
Is there any
Right.
kind of notice that I'll know if what student has declared or whether they've
No, you'll have to
logged
go
in?
into the website and look at what they declare. And that's part of the reason why we do that data update that we just had until March the 30th to do. So we're sure all the students have gone into and updated their profile in there. I see Sierra had a question. Just to clarify, I have a student that have graduated with their degrees. So they've finished their training and they've been given a 3-year professional licensure that have not completed the state required testing. So they are exited with completion because they're done with their training year. And the state has given them a provisional license. So they are eligible to work in an LEA that has a high percentage of Indian students. And if they do that, then they can start their service payback.
Okay, thank you. I think that when I just started back in August, and I think there was some confusion that we wasn't supposed to exit them from the PD system until they had completed the actual state licensure exams.
No, as soon as the college is finished with them, you have to report them as exited with completion or exited without completion.
Okay.
Okay,
So
sorry. Oh,
So with these students, even though they haven't completed the state licensure exam and they were given the provisional license, would I still exit them as completed?
Yes, because
Okay.
they're not continuing their education with the college. They've graduated.
Okay.
So their training program is done.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Dee?
that was kind of my question too, kind of a hit and miss. The other question that I have is, they got their certificate from the University of Western, and they went back to being certified, I guess, sub, because there wasn't a teacher position available, but they got to be picked up on being a certified sub. Got their degree. Can they claim those hours as a sub until their classroom comes available? They're getting a full-time
Yeah.
check from the
So
school.
regulations speak that, like, if they're a 50% teacher, they could be 50% service payback, 50% cash payback. I would think those hours would count. We just need their employer to verify how many hours they are working
Okay,
and then convert that to somehow of a school calendar.
okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Go ahead, Lirioda.
Okay, so I have a related follow-up question. So then if a student is working while they're preparing to take the exam and they are on a provisional license, that counts as payback service? They can count that as payback service time?
As long as that's qualifying employment
Okay.
in an LEA that is high number of Indian students.
Okay, okay, good, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That was my next question too, is these
Yep.
students have already been working with the provisional license, so their time already spent working can count towards their payback.
Awesome, thank you. Are there any other questions or scenarios you may have? Awesome, that was a really great question and answers. That was amazing.
I do have one. If we have, this is Dawn Hicks with Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. If we have a participant that is licensed, but they're struggling to find a school with their particular licensure that they have, but they're willing to obtain an emergency certification this summer in a different subject area, could that be an eligible employment for them for the fall?
According to the regulations, it does not. If you look at the definitions that we reviewed today, it says, let me see which one we need to look at. It might just take me. It says that their employment has to be in the area in which the PD program trained them in. So you can't have been an elementary education graduate and then go work in a special education job.
Okay.
But I will tell you this, that is something that the PDPDCS website doesn't track, monitor, or alert. It would just have to be us looking in, oh, hey, you were a English major for a secondary education degree, and now you're teaching elementary school. What's going on there? But it is supposed to be in the field in which they were trained.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Awesome, thank you. Any other questions? I don't want to cut this really great time short. If you know, if we spend the rest of the time questions and answers, that's fine too. We want to make sure everyone has everything they need as they are gearing up through the summer to begin their next school year.
And they are great questions. And anytime you have any that come up, please shoot us an email, either to Doris or I or both of us, and we'll get back with you with an answer.
Awesome. I don't see any folks coming coming off unmute. Yes, Lirio, we will have that jot form, that submission portal email to everyone. Once we do get it created, we will make sure that we have it for you all. Awesome. So we are going to get started on our next session, our next portion of today. And so just by a show of hands, how are, okay, a thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Are you involved with your project data evaluation and data sharing? Do you sit with your project evaluator? Are you the evaluator? Are you involved with how your data is shared? Have you shared your data? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. I see a no. I see a yes.
With whom specifically?
The
sharing.
That is up to you to decide. It's just don't include us. Do not include OIE's G6, but do you sit on your project data evaluation team? Have you shared your data before? Have you gone through, have you interpreted your data? Do you know where your data goes if it doesn't go to OIE? Awesome, awesome. So today we're gonna just look through, okay, I have my data. What do I do now? You know, what really does data evaluation look like? And how can we indigenize that? How can we make that work for our community? How can we make it look good for our community to digest? What does it look like to share my data as a story, not as numbers, but as an actual story for our participants, for our communities, for our leaders, whatever it may be. And so if you happen to have your APR with you or you remember it, I encourage you to take a look at your actual section A and your explanation of progress. So that's kind of what we're going to be going through today. And I'm just going to go through a few steps with you all to ask yourself, how can I evaluate my data and share my data in a way that is benefiting my community, our cultures and traditions, and our purpose and our goals. And so I know that we're running really close on time, so I'm just going to briefly go through it. But I highly, highly suggest if this is something that you're interested in and you want to talk with us more about, please sign up for a coaching call with us. We would love to talk with you and learn more about how you're sharing your data. And so step one, we want to ask you to ask yourself, have you determined your focus? What is your focus? And we're going to have a great small group breakout of what some guiding questions on how you can determine your focus. And what that means is when you're evaluating this data, what are the questions you're asking yourselves? And then keep in mind that however you determine your focus, that's going to determine the interpretation of your data. So the big question is, sit and ask yourself now, how do you want your data to be used to improve your program? How can you improve your program with your data? Have you sat down and looked at your data and compared from year 1 to year 3? Have you used and said, okay, I know what this says. How can I improve year 4? Does that conversation happen with you and your team? Have you found your focus of your data? And so, like I said, again, we're going to dive into these questions a little bit more. So together, you all can help each other determine your focus and answer those questions. So that's step one. And so step 2 is beginning to prep your data or using a program, whatever that may be, whether you're super into like data softwares, you like making spreadsheets, you like making all those great things, or you're just like, you know what, Doris, I just write it down in my APR and I keep it like that. Either or. And so step 2 is prepping your data. And so what does that mean to prep your data? What I'm simply saying is take your data out of your APR, take your data out of section A, take the data out of your explanation of progress and put it into a workspace. And this could actually be your planner. Those that have used the planner, that is a great space to take your data and put it somewhere. Or if you have another tool that tracks and documents your program's progress, it's important that you're prepping and you're tracking your data and that you're keeping it in a place. And this can be analyzed in a computer software program, whether you have a data management system, whether you like to have a binder with labels and you highlight them by different colors. It's basically prepping your data means to organize your data. Do you organize your data? Have you organized your data before? Or do you have a team that does that? How do you as a product director, how are you involved in that organization of the data? So that's just a few questions to sit and ask yourself. So moving on to step 3. And this is really important. And like I said, whether it's you doing these questions and answers or you have a team that you're involved in, I encourage you to look at your section A data. Look at the ratios, look at the raw numbers, look at, your actual performance data. What frequencies and percentages and ratios, what are you seeing? And this is the important step. This is what we mean by evaluation. What do you see? And I'm pretty sure some of us are doing this already, but here's where you really analyze your data. After organizing and pulling your data out and you're sitting and looking at it, what are some themes that you're seeing within your data? How are you coding your data? When I say coding your data, what are the different themes and patterns that you're organizing these data piles in? What are some common trends you see between your project objective data? What are some trends that you see between, year 1 retention versus year 3 retention? What are some differences you see between maybe the cost of putting a student through year 1? How does that cost change in year 3? And what can that tell about my program? So those are the type of things that we want to sit and ask ourselves when we're looking at our data, when we're sitting here coding our data. What are some frequencies that you're seeing? Another example could be, you might have a higher retention rate of students that are enrolled this year than last year. Sit and ask yourself, what did I do differently this year that maybe I didn't do last year? Or is there something I did in year one that retained my participants really well that I forgot to do in year three, and I can link those differences? What are those frequencies that we're seeing? For example, the number of participants that you have attending trainings. You started out with 16, but then now you only have 8 that show up. And that shows 50% retention. What is that showing you? What is that ratio saying to you? And so I highly encourage that this conversation be with your grant management team. It's a really great chance to determine, has my data fallen off? Or, is my data doing really well? And I just really haven't sat and looked at those frequencies, those trends. The biggest tip I can give you is to always ask why. Ask why in your data. Ask a lot of why. Why does this look like this versus my year one or year two? What and why are those different? And so just going into step 4 and 5 and 6. So after you have these conversations with your team, I highly recommend you just document that data. If those that have a planner, I highly recommend you use your planner. It's such a great tool. You can input these comments in your planner. You can document those findings. You can highlight those findings. And even in your planner, you can summarize your data. This is a great way to document. And that's a word that you're going to hear me say a lot when we're talking about evaluation and we're looking at our data. How are we documenting our data? How are we making sure that the project directors after us, or the team after us, or the next competition year after us, how are they receiving this data? How are they learning from this data? And then last but not least, are you communicating your findings? Have you sat down with your evaluation team and communicated your findings? And this is the fun part. And so just by a show of thumbs up, thumbs down, reactions, have you created a habit of reporting out your data and stories of your APR, whether that's on your Facebook page, whether that's through a tribal newsletter, whether that's through an email blast, posters? Do you communicate your findings in your data? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no, or reactions, or however you have it. Thank you. I see some reactions. Awesome. Perfect. And so that's just, and I know that was super, super brief because I really want us to get into our breakout rooms to talk with each other about how do you evaluate your data and what are some things that I can learn from your evaluation methods as well. And so we're going to go into our breakout rooms. We're going to do 3 breakout rooms, and I'm going to stop sharing just so we can get into that. But before we go into our breakout rooms, when you do go into your rooms, I am tasking you to find a reporter and a note taker. This can be one person, this can be one reporter, one note taker. So I challenge you to find one person or 2 people to report or to note take. And when you go inside your Padlet, and we're going to share the Padlet link for you all, we want the note taker to share your notes in the Padlet. So when you are going through these talking circles again, or you're sitting with your team again, you have a place to come back to these notes. You have a place to see these findings and these great conversations. And so when we go into our breakout rooms, identify one reporter, and that reporter can be the note taker too, or you can identify 2 people that reports and one that note takes. So when we go inside the breakout rooms, we're going to determine our focus together. We're going to determine, how can I set up my data to storytell? Is my data sharing storytelling, or am I just simply data sharing? We want to be in a place where we are storytelling our data, especially when we come from very oral, traditional communities. We want to be able to interpret our data to where our community can understand it. We don't want to show our data in a very westernized sense. We want to, how are we indigenizing our data sharing, and what is our focus? And so you have the questions on the screen, but we're also going to share the PDF in the chat as well for you all to have while we go inside the breakout rooms. I'm so sorry, guys, for cutting you guys so short. I know you all had really great conversations going. But just for the sake of time and getting you guys out on time, can we have someone from breakout group 1 share what is your focus of data sharing and how can you turn it into storytelling? So who is the great reporter from room 1? That's Brianne, Dawn, Nikki, and Summer.
I guess it is me. What story do you want your program to tell? Is that?
Yes, or just maybe if you guys went on a great tangent about your own program evaluation, how you're data sharing and turning it into storytelling.
We must have misunderstood because we went through the data sharing and the storytelling. So we went through those.
Okay.
We're like social media posts, videos of statements in program or something participants want to share the numbers and the percentages of the program success that need to be celebrated.
Awesome. Thank you. Those are really great ideas. Do you, just from your own experience with data sharing, is there one that works best for your project? Is it like social medias get the best hits, or is it something else that gets the best hits for you?
In our group, and I cannot remember if it was Summer, I cannot remember who brought this up, but they actually shared on social media, and that was the best for their particular program.
Awesome. Awesome. Any other sentiments from group 1? Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Room 2, are there any and anything you'd like to share out from yours? That would be Dee, Lirio, Patrick, Sharon, and Lacey.
I guess this is Dee, and just a little part what we shared. Sharon and I are connected to the same university, and so what really helps us as in our community, I shouldn't be speaking for Sharon too, but is just the graduates, how they get to wear their Indian outfits to the ceremony at Western, and they just make it a part of our tradition, I guess, our Blackfeet and Crow, that we kind of get to stand out at the university there. So just with seeing the pictures of our groups that we, we're a very small college here at Blackfeet, and Sharon as well, and we graduated 21 this year at Western. So just the pictures of since 2016 till present has been a really big way of sharing our stories. But with that being said, our story, we could share it, but it doesn't really tell the gist of how the project is being successful.
Thank you so much for that. Others from breakout room 2, any other nuggets of knowledge to share with the other peers on the call? Thank you for that, Dee. So moving on to last but not least, room 3, we had Sierra, Kelly, Melissa, Nancy, Renuka, and Shannon.
Okay, well, I guess I'll jump in. I think we had kind of volunteered someone else. But in the Padlet, we had included, as far as Renuka had a really good idea during the project directors meeting, she would really like to see, as far as maybe even participants, to tell our program stories, maybe invite participants to come on and share as far as their experience, maybe even provide sample lessons, things that they have been able to accomplish through the program itself, and then some of their successes in the classroom as well, because they are our own, as far as the program cheerleaders, our program, our success stories are our participants and the impact that they are making on our students. I know that in our very first grant experience that we had, we saw where something came full circle. Our very first participant that was a success, that completed our training, became employed, and just in a short amount of time was and he's still extremely successful in his classroom, leading in STEM as far as the competitions. But what was so neat is he has students in his classroom that are on an ACE grant. And so it is coming full circle, because he is impacting those students that are now also receiving funding through an ACE grant. In STEM. And that's what the projects are all about. So they are our success. I will say another thing, as far as the second thing that's in the Padlet, as with ours, we do provide data that typically goes to our leadership that is then shared during the tribal consultation meetings. Because during those tribal consultations, leadership, they are communicating with these administrators from these LEAs as far as, areas of concern, hard to fill areas. And so that is information that then they come back to us and say, well, do you have students? And we may or may not that have students that meet those needs, but that's how a lot of that data can be shared as far as internally, but then make a bigger impact to try to fill those LEA shortages, honestly.
Yeah.
So those were the main two things that I see in the Padlet itself. One of the things, the very last bullet point, where as far as how will the results inform your future work, I really like this project as far as the way it's set up, to where with those first 3 years, we're providing the assistance for them to complete their education, and the last 2 years, the induction, where we can almost get that student feedback pretty quick as far as on those different components of the grant, and then utilize that information in making even stronger applications and stronger grants, developing best practices. So I appreciate that as far as with this grant. Now, because the cycle, when we've only had this, it's only our second time to receive it, but I know that after between the first grant and the second grant, we were reapplying, during quickly into the project, so that basically, as you were starting induction with one group, then you were able to continue your recruitment, because we have such a teacher shortage in our state. It's important for us to be able to continue this funding so that we're getting more educators out there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's a lot of really good information that I hope that we all can take back to our own programs. Before I just show a few examples of data storytelling when it comes to social media, when it comes to other reports, are there any other folks from Room 3 that would like to share their experience or other things, maybe bounce off what Kelly has said? Well, thank you, Kelly, so much for that and being and letting us know. That was a really great a really great conversation, and that I'm really glad you were able to share with us. And so I know that we are at the top of the hour, but I just wanted to kind of go through that a lot of us said that we had social media, that we wanted to share social media and things like that. But just wanted to kind of go through and just show a few examples that, we said that we wanted to go through, social media campaigns and Facebook and Instagram, and also just kind of throw out the example of infographics. If we have any folks in the room that love Canva, love to do, digital art, infographics that compare. We have that example as well. But also wanted to throw in the ring that we have digital annual impact reports as well. And so we're hoping you'll see in the chat that there's some examples to show what those impact reports look like if there's other ways. So I know briefly, just wanted to kind of share what that looks like, being that social media is now at our fingertips and so easily. So as we're wrapping up, are there any additional questions for myself, for your TA team, or for Linda as we wrap up our talking circle today? And like Linda mentioned in the beginning, if you do not have any questions now, but you kind of ponder on some, or you have more budget revision questions, please reach out to us so we can get you all handled and have a very smooth summer for you all as well. So as I go through our last events and our last reminders, you will see an in-session feedback poll. Please feel free to fill that out. There's some short questions, some long answer questions that you will see at the end. So you will see that pop up here fairly shortly. And so kind of just going into OIE summer support, we will not have a talking circle until August, but we still will have our monthly office hours. And so again, please feel free to write down these dates. We will send calendar event invites for you as well. But we hope that in August, we'll kick it off with some more code review regulations, some more data and budget revision info, as well as other topics that if you strongly want to dive deeper into, please reach out to us, let us know as well. Also kind of just sliding along, coming this summer is a series hosted by OIE that will be focused on Executive Order 14112. So if you would like any other information, or if you would like other staff to attend these summer series, please email their contact info to us and we will have that email in the chat for you. So these are the dates. Please feel free to write them down. We can also send them out to you as well, but we really hope to see you. I see that there's a hand up.
Yes, it's me again. I'm so sorry. It's Renuka. You know what? Actually, you just touched upon it very briefly. The summer series, are those mandatory for the PDs?
Linda, are you able to answer that question?
Yeah, they are not. They're optional.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That's a really good question. And lastly, I know that we skated through this portion of our talking circle really quickly. So if there's any other topics, or you just kind of want to meet with us to dive deeper into data sharing, data collection, storytelling, please feel free to reach out to your TA team. We would love to sit and chat with you more. I know I love this topic. Olani, Casey, Inchin, we all just love sitting and talking with you and diving deeper into evaluation. So if that's something you would love to talk with us more, please feel free to schedule a coaching call. Again, it is the summer. We do have contact information shifts or things that may be. Oh, hi, Dee.
Hi, I'm sorry. We will have access to this recording, right?
Yes, you will.
Okay, just making sure.
Of course, yes, these will all be uploaded. If you have any folks that are on your team or new to the team, or maybe your email has shifted, please send that to us so we can get you on our listserv. And last but not least, here is our contact slide. Again, we want to thank you all for, coming out with us today, talking with us today, listening to Linda and I. We love meeting with you. And so if there's no other questions, we want to thank you. We hope you have a really good Wednesday, and we hope to see you at office hours. Please don't forget about your APR updates. We'll definitely keep in touch during this summer. And so thank you. Thank you so much for coming, and please have a good Wednesday.